Hi there, hello. My presentation today will be on W.E.B. Du Bois, and my name is John Oliver. This presentation is for AFAS 160 for the author discussion. So before we get started, I just want you guys all to know this is my first time using Prezi, so hopefully this runs smoothly, but we'll see how it goes. Next off, just back to talking about W.E.B. Du Bois. Du Bois was a very prominent leading African-American writer and social advocate. He's very involved in the early 1900s, and he stretched all the way up to about 1950s, 1960s when he passed away. Du Bois, just based off of his studies and his work, has gone down as being renowned for one of the most prominent figures of this time frame, and he was able to study with some of the brightest social thinkers of this time. So let's get to the Prezi. So the first topic we will focus on is his early life and education. As you can see here, he was born in Great Barring, Massachusetts. He really lacked a strong father figure, and that's because his dad died shortly after his birth. And because of that, Du Bois was, he grew up in a massive extended family, and this extended family really shaped and impacted how he viewed the world, and it really impacted much of his future life. Next thing we'll talk about is where he studied. As I said, he had the chance to study with a lot of very prominent African-American and just American thinkers of the time. We can see Harvard University there, Fisk University, and then University of Berlin, all well-known, well-renowned universities. Du Bois spent a lot of time as a teacher at the Wilberforce University and Atlanta University. While he was there, he was able to kind of cultivate some social change ideas and ideas centering around African American equality. He was also a founder of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, also known as the NAACP. He was one of the founding fathers of the NAACP, and he helped organize and he helped oversee the magazine called The Crisis. Du Bois also had an interesting career, interesting time while working with the Peace Information Center. While he was there in the early 1950s, the center refused to comply with the Foreign Agents Registration Act, which ultimately led to the indictment of W.E.B. Du Bois. He was indicted for failure to follow the law, but as the trial went on, he was subsequently acquitted. But even though he was acquitted of all the charges, his reputation and his work was tainted. Mostly it was tainted because, he was always viewed as being a communist supporter, communist associate. Ultimately, because of this, he was kind of pressured, forced to move out of the country. Went to Ghana, began to work on the Encyclopedia Africana, and he eventually became a citizen of Ghana in about 1963 and passed away in Ghana. So let's talk about his literary career next, because as we said, he was very involved in African American literature and all of that. You can see right here how he published 19 books, edited 4 magazines. He co-edited a magazine for children and produced numerous scores of articles and speeches. But of all of his work, the one he's best known for is The Souls of Black Folk. Now, The Souls of Black Folk is a compilation of many essays, and now all of these essays really focused on race and the experience of being African American in the American society of the early 1900s and throughout 1900s. My favorite two chapters from the Souls of Black Folk would be chapters 3 and 6, and we'll talk about this more in our next slide. But in chapters 3 and 6 is when he really disagreed with Booker T. Washington's approach for African American equality. Now, Du Bois wanted to focus on kind of a formal education in order for African Americans to achieve equality and achieve progress. This approach on classical education, he believed, would result in just more leaders and educators in the African American community. It was important that he put his stance in opposed to Booker T. Washington's viewpoint because it offered a differing and, as some would say, more radical approach that throughout time has been really nitpicked at, and you can go either way with whose approach was better. So, as we mentioned, Du Bois was sometimes caught up in some academic and social disagreements. Booker T. Washington really stressed a more industrialized educational approach, which would yield in more factory jobs, would yield in more of the classical, gritty, down on your knees and hands, hard work type of jobs. Du Bois thought African Americans should go through a more formal education process to become very prominent social thinkers and to become prominent leaders in society. As we can also see here, Du Bois also clashed with Marcus Garvey. Garvey was viewed, according to Du Bois, as a demagogue, which is a really harsh term to use to somebody, but Du Bois once again had a very interesting, very convoluted viewpoint on African American social change and equality. And because he was so radical, you could say, on his viewpoints for African American equality, he was ultimately driven to become a Marxist. So that concludes my author discussion. Thank you for taking the time to view this. And once again, I would like to thank Dr. C and yourself, Hayden, for giving me just the added time. It was a terrible, stressful week last week. So again, thank you very much. I appreciate it.